Welcome Wargamers, Doug here from 2+ Stuff, and Games Workshop was kind enough to send me the two latest battle tomes that came out. Now, in this video, we're just going to cover one. I have a second video for the other. We're going to be talking about the Hedonites of Slaanesh. So if you want to learn more about the Daughters of Cain, that video will have gone live at the same time. Go ahead and check that out, or if you wouldn't mind, watch both. Like, subscribe, tell me what you think. So anyway, here we go talking about the Hedonites of Slaanesh. And here we are at the downward cam taking a look at the new Chaos Battle Tome, Hedonites of Slaanesh. Now before I jump in, there was a bit of... some people expressed a little bit of frustration that this book got a re-release of a battle tome so quickly. I'm just going to say my piece on it. The army needed it. It was FAQ'd to oblivion, and frankly, we needed a... why not? Why have a good enough reason to drop some new Slaanesh models on us? Now, I don't cover the lore in these kinds of videos, because I saved that for dedicated lore weeks. So what I will say is, not a lot has changed lore-wise, even though we, in the Broken Realm series, have encountered a creature known as the Newborn, which I will talk about this coming week. Not a lot here, because it's still like the Newborn is gathering followers, so it's not quite in ascendancy, but the three ways that people react to Slaanesh's absence are still here. That's the Pretenders, the Invaders, that kind of stuff. The book does a great job. I mean, frankly, I reread all the unit entries. It's all very much the same, but just cleaned up. I think more succinct wording is great. There are some new characters, of course, introduced. And we're going to skip ahead to the rules part. Now, I am not going to read every single line in this book. There's just so much to cover. I believe, and I don't know if he still does it, but Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Gaming, I believe is his channel, he actually does do, like, he reads the book to you straight up, and I do not have the time, capacity, or patience to do that. So what I essentially do when I look at these books is, knowing me on my end, having read the lore, can I create a fun, flavorful army that allows me to bring stories to the table, which fundamentally is what I enjoy about the wargaming hobby, right? It's not about power gaming, it's not about lists or tournaments. Can I read this book and get excited for fiction and then bring that into reality? And so as an overview, I'm just going to say I think it does a great job. This is an army that I would play. For, you know, as a counterexample, I also like the Daughters of Cain book, but it's not an army I would play. You know what I mean? It's kind of understanding, like, I don't feel like I can bring what I want to the table. However, with Slaanesh, I do think so. We're going to kick it off by talking about the allegiance abilities. And they're very important, okay? Because there were changes. I wasn't up to date on the most recent FAQ that touched Slaanesh stuff. But all in all, they kind of redid a few things that I think are quite interesting and important. So, first off, when you choose a Slaanesh army, you can give it a Host of Slaanesh keyword from the list below. It used to be you had to. You had to choose one of them. Now it's an optional thing. It's not a massively big deal because there's not a lot of reason that you wouldn't take one, but yeah, it kind of changes the wording just a smidge. I think they left it open that way because they found out that releasing, you know, different army types like one of these in, say, a Broken Realm supplement is probably a really effective and cheap means of updating an army. So they're out there. Locus of Diversion, which was a lot of feel-badsies in the last book. At the end of the charge phase, each friendly Hedonite demon hero within 1 inch of an enemy can create a Locus of Diversion. If they do so, pick one enemy unit that's within 1 inch of that hero and roll a dice, adding 1 if that hero is a greater demon. On a 4-up, so 3-up for greater demons, that unit cannot pile in and move before... Sorry, I got them all out of place here. That unit cannot make a pile-in move before it attacks in the following combat phase. You cannot pick the same unit as the target of this ability more than once. So, my understanding from before was that it was... Nah, never mind. It's a radically different rule. No pile-in is actually a really big thing. I like that instead of fighting first, fighting last. Because it's an interesting lever to pull that hamstrings the abilities of some armies, like mass, you know, horde type units, and I absolutely love it. They saw that, but the first time that really stood out to me was the Deepkin, the sharks with the harpoon gun got that, where they pin people in place. Like, yes. Okay, Euphoric Killers. This actually went pretty much unchanged if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by a Hedonite model, which is dang near the entire book. That attack inflicts 2 hits on the target instead of 1. Make a wound roll and save roll for each. And if the attacking model's unit has 20 or more models, its attack inflicts 3 hits on unmodified 6. So that's really cool. It only affects melee weapons. It's super important. And if we skip to the back here, feel free to pause and look at these if you feel the need to. But there's not a ton of majorly sized units in this army. You have, what? You only have 2 that go above 20. You have your Demonettes in big blocks and the Archers. Archers actually come with 11 models in the box. So it's units of 11 and 33, which is awkward, weird, but I like it. I'm here for it. And everything else caps out at 20, 15, 9. Yeah, so that rule, this addendum to that is a little thing, but it can have huge results if you are a Horde army person. And now we have Feast of Depravities, which is obviously the new mechanic. It used to be, if you had a Slaanesh hero that, was it gave damage and received damage, the amount of damage they receive becomes depravity points. So if you just flood the board with as many heroes as you can, then there's all different ways of manipulating it. They made a change to it, and I actually really like it. So here we go. At the end of I'm just going to skip ahead to where it actually describes how to gain depravity points. At the end of the Battle Shock phase, you receive 1 depravity point for each unit on the battlefield that had a wound or mortal wound that was not negated allocated to it in that turn. Pause. That means they got hurt and they didn't die. Or has fewer models in it than it had at the start of the turn. And that last little clause is to prevent, like, you know, your Stormcast Eternal took a wound and the second wound and died, and then when you're in Battle Shock test, you're like, oh, no one has a wound on them. Nope, if they lost more than they got. Any kind of attrition is going to feed depravity points. Now, that's actually quite huge, given the number of ways that you can do that. Because remember, it's just you receive 1 depravity point for each in the battlefield that had a wound or mortal wound that was not negated allied to it in that turn. So that means even if you hurt yourself with some abilities and that kind of stuff, you can absolutely farm these points. There are some things that would cause mortal wounds. So interesting stuff. The prices, 10 Demonettes for 6. Here's what I'll say about the rule. I like this more than just the heroes thing. Although I will say, I'll give you a spoiler, they kept the flavor of the army centered around heroes, which is good. Because they're all champions trying to prove that they're the best and most beautiful and that kind of stuff. But I like this because just like the other gods, I feel like it has more to do with like the sweeping table. Like all of the things that even your opponents does are somehow feeding the chaos gods, whether it's shooting spells like for Tzeentch armies, or letting you corrupt the table like Nurgle, or, you know, killing and being killed by Khorne. I like this more than it's just focused on the Hedonite player's army. Right now it's a table thing. You could not bring a single demon army. You can skip the Locus of Diversion and have an all-mortal army that reasonably summons some stuff. And that's actually, I think, where things really should be. Yeah, I don't know. I like it in theory. Now, obviously, in practice, it'll shake things up because I think it really disincentivizes. Well, I was going to say it disincentivizes minimum-sized unit, because if you take one little wound, that's just another blood tithe point, and if there's, you know, across numbers of units, that could really add up. But the truth is, you know, even large bricks of enemies are going to give you at least consistency when it comes to depravity. So yeah, I don't know. I like the concept more. As far as balance goes, I wouldn't mind it if they kept the rule the same, and then if they ever needed to update anything, just fiddle with this, you know, down here. I'm not sure, because, like, I'm trying to think of the last game I played, okay, and how many units got injured. I'm going to start watching TTS and take notes on how many units get injured in a game, but it's interesting. But I like, again, I can't emphasize enough, I really like this concept table-wide. It fits in with the other gods. Sorry, my throat is all kinds of dry right now. And then we're going to move into what each and every type of, let's see here. Trying to make sure my computer doesn't fall asleep on me. All the different kinds of like sub-armies. So this is Invaders, Pretenders, and God Seekers. There we go. So interesting stuff. The Invaders are kind of what they did. Instead of having the actual army trait being centered around heroes, you know how I said before it was about the hero taking and giving damage, that kind of stuff. Now, as you play in your different hosts of Slaanesh, they each give the hero something special. Some special means of particularly they making depravity points. And I like that. You know what I mean? It takes a little bit less of the focus off the heroes in terms of like summoning a bajillion things like it did before. And kind of just gives it more of a little like flavorful reward than like a defining feature of everything. So Invaders, these are all very similar to what they were before, just with some tweaks. So Invaders, you get 3 generals instead of 1. They can all have a command trait. They're all considered to be generals for the purposes of using command abilities, but they cannot use any of those things if they are within 12 inches of any other general. So you want them to be spaced out. Ideally, I think, well, what we saw before, that's a great one because you can have 2 monster wreckers in front who only need to be 12 inches apart, and a 3rd support hero or a late game hero in the back. That's basically it. Then there is the Pretenders. I should say the Invaders thematically is about competing champions. This is like your classic Warband, right? They're all kind of competing with one another to show off who's the best, and that's why you have 3 generals there. For the Pretenders, the idea is that basically the one champion inside this warband is asserting themselves like, I am the new Slaanesh. So I am the king of depravity, all this kinds of stuff. And so it's interesting because this is probably the most hero-centric one. If the general of the Pretenders is a hero, which, you know, unless you're playing something very specific or your main heroes die, they have 2 different command traits instead of 1. In addition, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Pretender units that have 10 or more models while your general is on the battlefield. So, your giant unit of demonettes that have exploding 6s, if there's 20 or more models, you throw a block of 30, and as long as this dude's on the table, you're rerolling 1s to hit. I love it. It's pure and simple. The command traits, there are some good ones, absolutely. Everything from Battle Shock, hitting, you know, being better at monsters. Basically, they're all just like these boasts that a guy pretending to be Slaanesh could make, you know. I'm the strongest by myself, so he fights better when there's no one around him, that kind of stuff. And then my favorite from the last book that everybody else hated is the God Seekers. The idea for the God Seekers is that they are kind of the chariot and speed-based faction within a already speed-based faction. And their whole thing is, we're going to search every nook and cranny of the realms. We will find Slaanesh. So that's there. It's the whole thing. Speed, mobility. So what it used to be in the last book was like, you get speed bonuses, but if you can charge, you like have to, and that just took away a lot of player freedom. This one is just add 1 to charge rolls. Flat. Which is fantastic because there's so much mobility in this book. Just in terms of like being able to cover such a distance all at once. It's a great thing to have. Their special thing for their heroes. At the end, the thing that... did I have been reading these? Let's see. I actually think I skipped them. So I'm going to go back over here in just a second here. And I'll talk about how they moved the flavor to the hero. So I apologize for that. And to that, there's some really cool stuff here because remember, you're getting +1 to your charge. There's one that says you can retreat and still charge later in the same turn. You have these incredible... you know, Herald of Slaanesh on people lawnmowers and being able to retreat and charge, that kind of stuff, and getting some bonuses for doing it is utterly fantastic. And then there's one where you can fly. There's an artifact that lets you fly, which is just more and more on top of things. Now, I don't know how I missed this. I apologize. Each of these 3 hosts has a flavorful thing regarding your hero. So, the Invaders, this is the one where you can have 3 generals. At the end of your battle shock phase, so when you're tallying up your depravity points, you receive 1 depravity point if any of your generals are wholly within enemy territory. If 3, so presumably all your generals, are wholly within the enemy territory, end of your battle shock phase, you receive D3 depravity points. I don't think that that's that great, to be honest, because you're probably going to get 1 consistently, right? I mean, maybe by turn 3 they might be shot off the board or something like, I don't know. It could be faster than that for sure. I'm just trying to think of, like, I guess what I'm really getting at is the reward for having all 3 of them in your opponent's territory is kind of meh, right? I don't like D3. If it was straight 3, we'd be chatting. But it's just not enough to risk all of your heroes, which are, of course, where you summon things from. So I don't know. The Pretenders one is interesting. It is at the end of your battle shock phase, you receive 1 depravity point if your general is within 3 inches of an enemy unit. At the end of your battle shock phase, you receive D3 depravity points if instead of 1, if your general is within 3 inches of 2 or more enemy units. So if they get in there into the combat, again, this is the Pretenders. He's trying to prove himself as the dedicated, like, Warlord Supreme of Slaanesh. So that's a really flavorful one. I'm not gonna lie, I do think the Pretenders and maybe the Godseekers are the best in terms of, like, rules mechanics. And then the Godseekers special thing for their hero. At the end of your charge phase, you receive D3 depravity points if your general made a charge move in the same turn. Add 1 to the roll if any other friendly Godseeker units made a charge in that turn. Again, speed. You get D3 if your champion charges. There's ways to do retreat and charge. You can fly. Like, there's a myriad of ways. There's no reason you shouldn't get something, you know? So that's an interesting thought. I like quite a bit. The spell lores, I don't feel like changed a ton. Maybe, unless there's just one that I just misread. You know, for me personally, when I play, I really like spells that make the things on my table that I'm excited about even better. So stuff like, you know, Paths of the Dark Prince can let a unit fly, which is just, the caster can fly, I'm sorry. And it's for greater demons. So, yeah, I don't know. I really just liked it. But I liked it before, and I don't remember hearing a ton of complaints about the spell lore. At least nothing stood out to me. The Fiend of Slaanesh is largely unchanged. It does the same thing thematically, where you can reach in on a 2. You can risk taking a mortal wound, but I believe it's on a 2-up now. Add 1 to hit rolls made by that hero until your next hero phase. But here's the thing: is that let me actually just read it to you so you can understand what I mean. At start of hero phase, you can pick 1 friendly Slaanesh hero within 6 inches of this terrain feature to make a sacrifice. If you do so, that hero suffers 1 mortal wound, and you must roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2-up, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by that hero until your next hero phase. If the hero you picked has an artifact of power, instead of suffering 1 mortal wound, they can sacrifice the artifact to do so. If they do so, the artifact no longer exists. And then again, it's just giving you the option. You can either take a mortal wound, but my understanding is that you would get a depravity point for that, because then you would end the turn having lost a wound. Unless I just totally botched a rule. Let's see. At the end of the battle shock phase, you receive 1 depravity point for each unit on the battlefield that had a wound or a mortal wound that was not negated. Well, you have to suffer the mortal wound here, or chuck an artifact. So that's an interesting thing. I feel like there's no reason... I mean, unless there's a 1-use only artifact and you use it, and then it's just on your war scroll technically, you can chuck it. But, I mean, even then, it's like... I don't know. I feel like the whole point of Slaanesh is just being like, punch me in the face, because if you get that wound, you get a depravity point. I don't know. We're going to skip ahead here. Now, I'm going to... I love the fact there's 2 missions. There is a Path of Glory section. One of the things I wanted to focus on was how well I felt they integrated the demons and the mortals. That to me was very important, because I think the other books are nailing it. Over here to the left, there's a few battalions. We have the Supreme Sybarites, which is your heroes. It's just 3 to 6 Slaanesh heroes. And basically, let's see, roll a die. At the start of your hero phase, roll a dice. If the number is less than or equal to the number of heroes from this battalion that are on the battlefield, you receive a command point. So, I mean, okay, not bad. I'm totally okay with the battalions not having bonkers rules and leaving that to the army list or whatever. We have, this is the cavalry-based one where it's chariots and all the different seeker types. And they get a pile-in of 6 inches rather than 3, which is really cool. Let's see, so they're pinning down their prey. I like that quite a bit. I'm not even Epicurean Revelers. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by a demonette from this battalion is 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target and the attack sequence ends. Don't make a save roll. I like this because my mind immediately goes to the Pretenders, where the Pretender guy gives you reroll hit rolls of 1. Of course, if you take large demonettes, it's 2 to 6 demonette units and 0 to 4 of a few different other things that don't matter, because you're all here for the demonettes, right? It's all the only rules affect the demonettes. So my point is, you're what? So if you have a big, massive unit, let's say 25 make it into combat, right? A few were shot on the way in. The second that that steamroller hits something, 6s to hit explode into 3 attacks, and you're re-rolling 1s. And then with this, if they're part of it, any wound rolls of a 6 go straight through as mortal wounds. Obviously, they get a chance if they have some rule that ignores those, but whatever. I don't know. I think that's great. Yeah, I think it's highly specific. I think that's actually what I'm really thinking, is that this is wonderful if you're playing that army, but if you're not, I'm like, I'm pretty lukewarm on it. How much are these things? Let's see. Nope. I'll try all the battalions over here. Let's see. So the Epicurean and the Supreme Sybarite. Let's see. 150 for the leader one and 180. But those are cheap, honestly. Like, I would probably build my 2-drop Slaanesh list out of that, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just a ton of support heroes and big old mega blocks of demonettes, and it allows you to have 0 to 4 Hellflayers, Exalted Chariots, units of Fiends. Yeah, I think it's great. I already talked about the Cavalcade, 6-inch pile-in. Then we get to the new ones, and the new ones have, so they basically have 3 demon ones and 3 mortal Slaanesh ones, where it just uses a bunch of the mortal units. The Depraved Carnival is my favorite because we loved the Cunning Rucks so much we decided to do it, but make it sexy this time. And that's exactly what it is. It's 3 Lords of Pain or Shard Speakers of Slaanesh. Those are 2 of the new heroes in any combination. And 3 units of Bliss Barb Archers. Those are the archers on foot, the new kit that looks absolutely amazing. And it says once per turn in your hero phase, you can pick 1 Bliss Barb Archers from this unit from this battalion. That unit can shoot. So it's just a shooting phase in your hero phase. And I was doing the math on it, because all the exploding things and that kind of stuff is always about melee weapons. It's all right. I don't think you'll see it a ton. If I was given $1 million and told I have to play Slaanesh, this is what I would take, because quite frankly, I like the models. I really like the archer models, to be honest. Then we have the Nobles of Excess. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by units from this battalion that made a charge move in the same turn. And these are the new, the 5-man, foot soldier units. Myrmidon, Myrmidesh Painbringers or Simbaresh Twin Souls. We'll get to their war scrolls in a bit. I'm not going to cover the demons, but because it's just, I looked it over beforehand. It's a lot of retooling and rewording of the exact same thing. But I will talk about the mortals. So Exalted Speed Knights, which is the best. That's like Team Club Awesome Tiger, you know, just a crazy awesome name. And this one is 2 to 3 of the Bliss Barb Seekers, Sick Blade Seekers, and 2 to 3 units of normal Seekers. So what you have there is a whole bunch of cavalry, 2 to 3 units of the ranged cavalry, 2 to 3 of the melee variant of that same kit, and then 2 to 3 normal Seekers. What you get for that is after armies are set up, but before the first battle round, up to D6 units from this battalion can move up to 6 inches. Given the speeds that we're talking about, and if you take this and say the God Seekers, where you get +1 to your charge, and there's a few other things, you can have an incredibly aggressive army. This is the kind of army that I played with my Beasts of Chaos. Anything that lets me move is massively powerful. Now, I am going to breeze over the demons because, you know, if you want to know every single rule in this book, there's other channels to go. Like I said, go ahead and check out Ash. But I do want to focus on a few things. One, I'm not going to read this, but this is the War Chungus, big boy on his little, like, cart, for lack of a better word. I'm not going to read all of it. Essentially, the way he works, because a few people were asking in my chat yesterday as I was live streaming, basically, there's like 5 dudes on this one chariot. And as he takes wounds, you lose access to the abilities that a few of them give you. So like, if you have 0 to 4 wounds, they're all working. If you have 5 to 8 wounds, you only use the rules for Painbringer Kyazu and Lashmaster Visk. 9 to 12, you only have Painbringer Kyazu, and after 13 wounds, which he has 18, so when he's limping along, none of them. And so they bring you unique things. In addition to that, this model gains an ability each battle round as shown. Note all of these abilities are cumulative. So as he is degrading in health and losing access to abilities, he's simultaneously ramping up his power on his own. So if you leave him alone, by the end of the game, you just ignore him, which, you know, is a good, frankly, tactic for a lot of these big heroes, that kind of stuff. If you leave him alone for too long, he's just going to get more powerful because he's not losing abilities at the same rate that he's gaining them. So he can become a wrecking ball. If you focus on him too much, I'm sure there's other things he's doing, but he's still going to gain something. So that's, I don't know. I like it. I like it quite a bit. For me personally, this is just a wall of text, you know, and that, man, it's a bit much, but I'm sure if I broke it down, it would be pretty simple. I was really surprised to see that Sigvald, for as much popularity and fame as he got a pretty small entry here. Glorious Reborn. I feel like it should be Glorious Rebirth or Glory Reborn. That's just my opinion. This model fights at the start of the combat phase if it made a charge move in the same turn, so it's like a 40k model. It cannot fight again in that phase unless an ability lets it. So honestly, it's kind of like how some of the old Bone Splitter rules used to work. And then we have over here, let's see. His weapon is interesting. He's only a 6 wound hero. That kind of stuck out to me. 1 inch range, attacks C below, but he hits on 2s, wounds on 3s, -2 rend and D3 damage, which is amazing. Add 3 to charge rolls for this model, period. Add 3 to charge rolls. Just boom. He's not keyworded, so he can be a part of any of the hosts, which is freaking dope. So he could get +4 if he does Godseekers. In addition, the attacks characteristic of Shard Slash, his sword, is either 5 or equal to the unmodified charge roll made for this model in the same turn, whichever is higher. So you have to roll, that number is how many attacks he gets, or 5, which is whatever's higher, but you're adding 3 to it when you go to charge. So that's just kind of an important thing. I'm not opposed to that rule. Like, I like the idea of like the amount of force with which you smash into battle, you know, because you are trying to replicate the intensity of a 3-inch, you know, super boost of speed. I like it. It's more just, I can see this being something where people forget, and they forget to like memorize what number it was. And so the default is, I feel like there has to be like a TO thing that was like, if you did not say to your opponent what the number is, it's 5. Like, I don't care if you rolled boxcars and you got 12 and you needed that. I do not care. You have got to acknowledge to your opponent how long the charge was unmodified, then modify it, and then in the next phase. So it's just something, be wary of it. So, I mean, and I say that not because I think anyone's going to cheat. Obviously, the easy way is to just knock it down to 5, but just so everybody has a good time. That's all. But what makes this sword unique, wounds inflicted by an attack made with Shard Slash cannot be negated. So, Slaanesh came back specifically to hunt Gotrek and Phoenix Lord Captains, or whatever they're called. Things who won't die. Lord of Pain, I believe his war scroll is unchanged from when we saw him kind of get put out before. I like his command ability. You can use this in... Sorry, I should add... Sigvald ignores wounds and mortal wounds on a 4-up. Anyway, you can use this command ability in the combat phase. If you do so, pick one friendly mortal Hedonite Slaanesh unit within 12 inches. You can re-roll hit rolls for attacks made by that unit in that phase. So that's awesome. Remember, it does happen in the combat phase. So obviously you can't use it on archers and that kind of stuff, but wonderful. Flat reroll hit rolls? Are you kidding me? Absolutely. The Shard Speaker. Now this is one of our new heroes that I didn't hear a whole lot about. 6-inch move, 5 wounds. She basically has the old man stick that everybody else has. Every other wizard in the game. 2 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend, D3 damage. Her abilities though. If this model successfully casts a spell that is not unbound, until your next hero phase, this model can attack using the Shadow Cloaked Claws melee weapon, and you can add 2 to save rolls for attacks that target this model. Okay, so there's a lot there. So the more she casts, when she casts successfully, she gains access to a secondary weapon. Basically like the hooks, like the mist around her becomes alive and starts to kill people. And she becomes much more defensible. So she goes to a 3-up essentially, which honestly, you don't want her in combat, but that's a pretty good thing. If your wizard can stand back and just by being a wizard and being good at their job, they get stronger for it, more resilient. That's great. The Bliss Barb Seekers. You know, it's so funny. People made fun of the Lumineth Kangaroos, but this seems like an equally ridiculous attempt at archery on the back of this thing. Anyway, 14-inch move, which is massive. 4 wounds. I love it. Love everything about it. 5-up save. And they come at you with the bow. 18-inch range, 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. Now, I think darn near all of the melee attacks in this... Oh, sorry, not melee. Ranged attacks. Yeah, they're pretty much all the same. All right, Bliss Barb Bow. Oh, yeah, they're exactly the same. So, yeah, sorry. Interesting. So the Seekers get an extra attack. 4s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend. Beyond that, let's see. This unit can run and still shoot later in the turn. Super important for cavalry attacks. And Vectors of Agony. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a missile weapon by this unit is 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target and the attack sequence ends. So they kind of have that 1 roll baked in. I like that. I don't know how effective they would be. I mean, I look at these guys, the Bliss Barb Seekers, and they seem like they'd be a lot of fun for specifically board control. Like moving them to an area so that your opponent can't summon stuff, you know, or deploy them outside 9 inches. Yeah, that's kind of how I view them. And they're shooting the whole time, but they're not meant to like do the work. They're kind of your defense, so to speak. I like it though. And here's their melee variant. 14-inch, yeah, it's the same stats. 14-inch move, 4 wounds. But they have a glaive. 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend and 1 damage. Okay, I mean, it's a solid profile. Let's see. You can reroll charge rolls for this unit. That's wonderful. And then decapitating strikes. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with the Sick Blade Glaive is 6, that inflicts mortal wounds in addition to any normal damage. So that is wonderful. There's a lot of there's a couple ways to tinker with hit rolls, but I don't remember seeing anything that modified wound roll. So it's good, but I'm not sure how much, how you can really ramp that up. That's great. I mean, if nothing else, it's a great thing to have coming at you from the flank. Then we have my favorite, which are these two units here. Mirrordash Painbringers I guess these two are the same kit. Twin Souls and Painbringers. So the Painbringers, 2 wounds. I love it. Like a Chaos Warrior, 6-inch move, 4-up save. They have the Wicked Scimitar, 1-inch range, 2 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. Everything's stellar so far. They just seem like a very normal unit, like of Chaos Warriors or Liberators or whatever. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit is 6, that attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to other damage. That's fantastic. And then the shields, you can reroll save rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target this unit. Wonderful. Like, can I just say, this is my favorite War Scroll so far. It's just a simple 5-man unit that is Chaos Warriors, but with a cool theme, I like it. And then we go to their alternate build within the same kit. These ones have an 8-inch move, 4-up save, still 2 wounds, that's great. And they have the Merciless Blades, 2-inch range this time, 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend, and 2 damage. So, very different profile. You're giving up your rend and one of your to hit. You go from a 3 to a 4, but you get 2 damage. So that could be great. Oh, and you're faster. Okay. As far as the abilities go, at the start of your hero phase, you must pick one of the following abilities to apply to this unit until your next hero phase. You must pick a different ability in each battle round, so you have to rotate out. Okay, but the nice thing is I believe it's unit to unit, right? You must pick one of the following to apply to this unit. Yeah, so you can have, like, if you had 2, they could be alternating. One could be A, one could be B, and then you swap. The first one is Ego-Driven Excess. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by this unit. Okay, 4-up rerolling is pretty good. And Fiendish Reflexes. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this unit. On a 5-up, it's negated. So you're constantly flipping between very defensive and very offensive. And I like that. I don't like the bookkeeping if you have multiple units, but if you have one big one, man, I think that'd be really cool. Where are they at points wise? Let's see. Twin Souls. Hey, battle line if your general is Lord Pain. That's cool. And they can go up to a 20-man unit. That's huge. I like it. And then the archers here down below. This is the one I was talking about, the cut and ruck, but with style. They each have a bow, 2 attacks, 18-inch range, 4s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. A knife that you should never use. And what's interesting is this is actually 11 models in this kit. The 11th guy, known as the Bliss, Brew, Homunculus. Let's see, 1 in every 11 models can be this. 1 in every 11 models in this unit must be a Bliss, Brew, Homunculus. It's armed with just the knife, so he doesn't have a bow. It's important to remember, because it's different than any other, banner holder or whatever. Add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with missile weapons by this unit, while it includes any of them. So it can go from 11 to 33, but as long as you have any Bliss, Brew, Homunculus is in your army, you can keep shooting. Now the nice thing is, if you're smart about maxing this out and you want to just hail the entire table with arrows, cut and ruck style, the first 2 wounds that come back at this unit, you just take the extra 2 homunculuses out. So it's not really like a tax to have 3 dudes standing around without bows. And then you just leave the last one alive. Because as long as there's one, you're still getting all your benefits. So pretty good. And then their ability is this unit can run and still shoot later in the turn. So they are incredibly aggressive for archers. I like it. And there's just two left here. We have Slongor Fiend Bloods, which is a unit that I was very excited for. These are essentially your sorry about that. I had a little light problem there. These are essentially your Zangor, you know, Enlightened, that kind of stuff. 3 big ol' honking dudes in a unit. 3 wounds each, 8-inch move. Okay, that's cool. Let's see. Has any number of models. Each is armed with razor sharp claws. One of them can be a hero, and he gains this gilded weapon, the second profile. So they all have a 2-inch range attack. 3 actual attacks going in. 4s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend and 1 damage. Okay. Slaughter at any cost. Add 1 to the attack's characteristic of this unit's melee weapons if it made a charge move. That's wonderful. Because if you got all 3 into combat, which 3 is not too hard, that would be 9, 10, 11 attacks base. And then with this, if they charged in, that would be, what, 4, 8, 12, plus 3, 15 attacks. Okay. Cool. Obsessive Violence. At the end of the combat phase, pick 1 enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit and roll a dice for each each model in that unit. For each 4-up, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So people don't want to be around him. I don't know how to feel about this, because they don't seem to like do anything very unique. Like, I love the models. 140 for 3. I don't know. I gotta think about that War Scroll for a sec. Because I look at this in that profile, right? I'm like, well, I mean, 4-up, 3-up, -1 rend and 1 damage. Literally, the archers do that exact same thing as long as there's 1 homunculus in there, and they do it from 18 inches away. So I'm like, I don't know. That's pretty rough. And then here is the Underworld's Warband. And it's essentially... Let's see, do they actually condense the entire thing? Is there a hero with it? Let's see. What is it called? The Dread Pageant. Yeah, the Dread Pageant. Oh, yeah. So it is unique. It's the entire warband is 1 entry instead of the 2 entries that have to be taken together, which I like. And honestly, it's just a mix of the attack profiles that we've seen so far. There's a people with the bow. There's a Fiend Blood. Yeah, I don't see, let's see, you can reroll a dice each time you allocate, roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to the hero. On a 4-up, that mortal wound is negated. Sweet. Yeah. I mean, he's cool. He honestly is cool. He's a cool unit. It's just not doing anything very specific. It's just a little bit of everything because of the nature of the Underworld's Warband, which honestly, I'm not opposed to, you know, keep them simple. And the endless spells, which we already had. So, final thoughts. Obviously, I didn't go into every single detail on everything. My thought is, I feel like Slaanesh is finally, like, they as a faction are finally well written in the way that the other Chaos books are. That I can read a Black Library novel, get super pumped for something, and then bring it to life on the table. Right? I absolutely love that. I feel like there's enough variety in the mortal sides of things for us to have mortal armies that still bring demons in as they bring destruction and debauchery into the realms. So I really do like it. As if you are predominantly a demon player, all the things that you enjoyed about the old battletome are still present in some form. The rules may be different. Things always get worse. Things always get better when new stuff releases. But in terms of, like, if you used to run a Demonette Horde, of course you can still do that. And in fact, there's we covered a few things that really go a long way to making that happen. If you liked running a lot of heroes and having, you know, keepers of secrets running around like monsters, you can absolutely do that too. So I think, I like to think that it lost some of its teeth, and when I say teeth, I mean like the parts that were absolutely just unfun to play against and because they were too good. I think it lost some of that, and it gained a lot more options, both on the table with more units. Of course, more units means more options. And then it gained a lot in the terms of just being a more fleshed out army, being able to play the way that all the other Chaos God factions can. Mortals, demons. On the other hand, you have Slaves to Darkness as a middleman resource that anyone can take. You have, you know, built-in summoning mechanics and that are about table-wide stuff and not focused on your heroes. I love it all. So, friends, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I apologize for my throat, seems to be going out, but I hope that you enjoy this book. I'm very excited to talk about the lore and get into some Hedonites of Slaanesh goodness. So thank you all so much for watching, and happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.